What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome to episode 11 of our 30-part series on every single GMAX Pokemon. In this series, my guests and I go in depth on every Gigantamax Pokemon out there. We'll be covering their stats, move pools, potential teammates, impact on the Sword and Shield competitive meta, and in the end, give it a ranking. Once the series is over, I'll be covering the top 10 Gigantamax Pokemon in Sword and Shield. Last week we covered GMAX DREDNAW with Ultra Player 12. It was one of the most informative videos on the series so far, so if you missed it, make sure to check it out. Also, shout out to Adriano. I really appreciated the comment that you left on last video, and it really added it to the discussion that Josh and I had, so thank you very much. Also, that inspires me to add something new to the series. If you guys comment on the video in a way that enhances the topic, you'll have a chance to be featured in the next episode, so make sure to comment when you can. Today, we're going to be talking about a new Gigantamax Pokemon, and that is going to be GMAX Toxtricity. And I am not alone. I'm joined by the commissioner of the Twitch Battle League and one of the admins of the PokeQuality Discord server, GoldoaDragon. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm having a good time over here.
Goldo's a great guy. He is very wholesome and been in a lot of different leagues at this point, so make sure to go and check him out if you like competitive Pokemon. The Twitch Battle League is blowing up. It's absolutely incredible there, so if you like that kind of stuff, live draft leagues is going to be your way to go there. Now, if you guys are excited for the video, make sure to leave a like on the video, comment your thoughts on GMAX Toxtricity, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy competitive Pokemon content. But we'll start off like this as always. Goldoa, what is your favorite thing about GMAX Toxtricity?
Honestly, I just hosted a couple weeks ago a What's the Best GMAX Mon poll on my own server, and GMAX Toxtricity won. This was not competitive based, it was strictly design based, so I think I have to admit, the design is sweet.
Definitely. I mean, when you said it won, I was like, what? How? Like with Cinderace, with Inteleon, with Rillaboom, with Charizard, what is going on? But, I mean, design, I can't deny. It is absolutely beautiful. It's such an incredible Pokemon. But competitively, it's another story. Its stats are like not great. Like you got 75 base speed, which on a electric type Pokemon isn't that great, and your special attack stat at only 114 isn't all that. Like it could be better, and its bulk is just terrible. Do you think it's missing any key stats that it really should have?
I mean, obviously, as you said, an electric type that is slow is just not gonna cut it, and it's not slow enough like the maybe Vikavolt style electric type that's gonna be like a slow momentum on. It's just like stuck in the middle there, with just a weird speed tier, tough to use. And it's actually kind of stuck there from my opinion in the poison side as well. You got mons like Salazzle on the faster end of poison, and then the slow, bulky poisons, obviously not necessarily in the game, but like Alolan Muck, like slower end. And it's kind of stuck in the middle on both ends, doesn't really fill the bulk role, doesn't really fill the speed role for either of its two typings.
Yeah, and honestly, its typing defensively is pretty good. Like it has like 8 resistances, which is insane. But again, you have like 70-ish in all of your bulk stats, so you're really not going to be taking many hits, and you have no recovery either. So if it was a defensive-minded Pokemon, that'd be great. It just isn't.
No, I totally agree. And the other thing that kind of is incongruous with its stats is its abilities, right? Because Technician doesn't help it when it has no moves that get boosted by Technician, really, that are relevant at least. It also gets access to Shift Gear, which would be one way to augment maybe that speed problem we were talking about, but it's more oriented to the special side, so that doesn't really help it either.
Its abilities are terrible for Gigantamaxing. When you're talking about a regular Toxtricity in base, Punk Rock is fantastic. It's an amazing ability, but because you're Gigantamax, there is no sound-based moves. Because you're Gigantamax, there's no moves that are below base 60. So what is the point of having an ability on this Pokemon? It's so unfortunate because it could be a lot better if it just had at least some ability that would be useful for it in Gigantamax, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, the other thing is the fact that it has these two forms, the Amp form and the low-key form, gives a little bit of your set away moving into like how you're actually going to be facing it when someone else is staring it down. They can actually kind of tell maybe what nature it is. It's not a perfect metric, but it's usually at least some sort of answer, or at least cue in to how they're going to be playing this Toxtricity as they play with it throughout the battle.
It also lets you know a bit about what moves the Pokemon could have. Not very much, because they mostly are going to run the exact same set, but I believe the Amp form is the only one that can actually run Shift Gear, so you can know if it's running a low-key form, you don't have to worry about it boosting its speed, which is fantastic. But let's kind of move on and talk about its move pool a bit. The move pool is not good. You have your electric moves and your poison moves, which are great typings. They're really good offensively. Only thing is, your coverage moves are like really bad. You have one ghost move in Hex, you have one dark move in Snarl, you have one psychic move in Stored Power, you have like Drain Punch and Fire Punch, and then it's a lot of normal moves. I just don't get what the mindset was on Game Freak's behalf when creating this monstrosity.
Yeah, honestly, they clearly were focused on one thing, which was its like punk rock status. They gave it a whole bunch of moves that are sound-based, that are super cool, really strong moves that have a lot of competitive viability, except when it Gigantamaxes, because it loses that sound aspect to it, so it actually doesn't get the boost anymore.
I mean, that's 100% accurate. I do think it has one of the more middling GMAX moves. That's GMAX Stun Shock, which if you guys don't know, it has, when it attacks, it's an electric attack that does significant damage, obviously, because the GMAX move, but its secondary effect is that it has a 50% chance to either poison or paralyze your opponent. So it's basically a 25% chance to get the status that you want, either paralysis or poison. So it's good because status is nice, it's just not ideal because you can't choose which one it's going to be, and it's kind of a gamble as well.
Yeah, the 50% chance that you get nothing as well can just kind of, you can't really plan for it in any way. You know, it's not as reliable as something, say, like Nuzzle or Thunderwave itself, or even Toxic. It's just, you have to be willing to see where it takes you, and it's sort of one of those things where with this mon, a lot of playing with Toxtricity feels like, let's see where it takes me. You know, like, I'm going to have some fun with this, but I'm not necessarily going to be using it for its most competitive, every time is super consistent set.
Our hands are tied when dealing with GMAX Toxtricity.
Yeah, it's going to end up having just a lot of the time, it's not going, the ability is not going to be relevant while it's GMAX, and that's going to be tough because there are so many GMAX Pokemon that while they're GMAX, the ability is almost entirely what makes them, pushes them over the edge, and Toxtricity just loses out on that. So it ends up having to fall back on, you know, what can it do while it's GMAXed, and as you mentioned earlier, its move pool just isn't quite there.
Right, and obviously it's just one Pokemon and it doesn't make an entire team. It needs some partners. Do you have any Pokemon in mind or some roles that need to be filled when drafting a GMAX Toxtricity and trying to figure out what will make it succeed the most?
There's two things that I can think of right off the bat with Toxtricity. First, getting it in safely is going to be really vital because you want to bring it in when it's going to be most useful, forcing switches and times where your opponent can't really handle it, bringing it in on things like with those 8 resistances, things like fairy types. So getting some momentum mons that can give you either teleport or U-turn or whatever to get into the Toxtricity reliably when the matchup comes up for it would be really useful. And then the second thing is, obviously, on the flip side, it has some crippling weaknesses. So having something that can be off the ground to take those ground type attacks that it's quad weak to, and having something to take maybe like the psychic type attacks that'll be aimed towards it would be really, really useful for it. So perfect partner would be like Mandibuzz, which has all of the things I just mentioned and is also super useful as far as getting the Toxtricity in safely.
Mandibuzz was number 1 for me. Immune to ground, immune to psychic, momentum, defog, it's fantastic. It's also bulky enough to really take hits. Another couple options I found are really important. Skarmory is huge because it provides you with, again, the resistance to psychic and the immunity to ground, but it also gives you access to stealth rocks and spikes, which are very useful because you do want to make sure your opponent is chipped down as much as possible because Toxtricity only has 114 in its special attack. Celebi is also good because it does resist both of those. Not as good as Skarmory or Mandibuzz because it's not immune to either of the attacks, it just resists them. It does have recovery, which is fantastic, and natural cure to deal with something like Toxic, and it does have those hazards still as well. But for me, one of the most important things that is very overlooked when it comes to this Pokemon is you need other special Wallbreakers. Pokemon that will allow Toxtricity to put in work once it's actually at the end game. Something like Hydreigon, Volcarona, Porygon Z, Primarina are all fantastic. They're all really hard hitters, and they also all get momentum now, which is amazing.
Not just those special Wallbreakers, but something that's actually just going to come in as this thing gets its attacks off. More than likely what Toxtricity is going to do is leave a dent, maybe not a hole. Toxtricity doesn't quite have that speed, so getting something quick, fast, revenge killer would also be super useful for Toxtricity.
Completely agree. Now we're going to kind of fly through this last part because some leagues allow it, others don't. If you could have 1 or 2 items on Toxtricity that you think would be very useful on this Pokemon, what would they be?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is if it's a league that GMAX is not required the first turn you come in, Throat Spray is huge. This thing obviously loves having it. Getting that special attack boost before you even Gigantamax by going for something like an Overdrive would be amazing. So that would be one option. Another option would just be like a Shukaberry, being able to tank an extra hit, do a lot of extra damage. I mean, this thing is primarily oriented to do damage. It doesn't want to take hits. But the problem is it doesn't quite do enough damage to where it doesn't need to sometimes take that one hit, even from something that doesn't Gigantamax onto your opponent's side.
Yeah, I had both of those on my list as well. I would definitely say a Life Orb is also really solid. Obviously, you're taking that chip damage, but Toxtricity really needs that extra power, and the 1.3 times boost that it gives is really invaluable. And the last one, it was kind of a niche option, but just in case you're dealing with something that could potentially be like a Scarf ground type, Air Balloon is really solid. It could be really good to allow you to potentially set up a shift gear on that Pokemon, and then you'll outspeed it the next time it comes in and be a lot stronger that way around. Now, obviously, because I find that items aren't as useful on this Pokemon, if you're running in a league where the GMAX Pokemon must hold a Pokeball, something like the GDL, then you can actually benefit a lot from Toxtricity because it doesn't necessarily need one specific item. So it's not as hurt as much as other Pokemon are.
Yeah, I agree. I think this thing it's funny because on some level it's like its ability is useless and items are not that helpful, but on some level that also means that on its own merits it can do what it needs to do in a league, like you said, that has item restrictions or GMAX restrictions, like you must GMAX the first turn. Well, all right, that's fine. I mean, this thing can come in and do what it needs to do. It doesn't need to set up like some other GMAX mons would prefer to.
Absolutely. Now we're going to move on towards the end of the video. We've talked about its stats, its move pool, partners, everything like that, but we need to give it a ranking. We need to figure out where it compares to the other Pokemon that can Gigantamax. If you can give it a ranking between 1 and 10, 10 being the highest, where would it fall?
Most leagues at this point have started doing GMAX like they were doing Megas before, so this will probably never be a tier 1 GMAX Pokemon. If it is, this thing gets like a 2, never draft it. If it is like a tier 2 GMAX Pokemon, then it's probably closer to a 5. If it's something that fits your team, I think it's okay, but if it's not what you're looking for, there are usually better options.
Yeah, I would agree pretty much with that. It's never going to be tier 1. Tier 2 even is a bit of a stretch because I find it's just a worse Duraludon, because Duraludon is a harder hitter, it's faster, and its coverage is better. So there is that. The only thing Duraludon doesn't get that this Pokemon does is Volt Switch. But in terms of ranking, for me, I would definitely have to give it a 6 on 10. That would mean that it definitely hits hard enough. It can do a lot of damage. It's just not going to be the superstar that you usually want your Gigantamax Pokemon to be.
I can concede that. I think, thinking about it a little bit more, what it can do, especially outside of GMAX, I think that's something to consider as well, right? You still draft as a GMAX Mon, but more often than not during the battle, it won't actually be Gigantamax. I think it does get a little bit of extra value just for the things it can do when it's not Gigantamax as well.
For sure, and you don't have to ever Gigantamax. It depends on the league that you're in and what is allowed or not allowed. Now, Goldo, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on when it came to GMAX Toxtricity?
No, I think we covered most of it. Obviously, the fact that it loses access to electric terrain is really unfortunate for it, but getting Stab, Max Ooze to boost its special attack is something that it actually loves having, so given a take there on when it GMAXes how it functions.
For sure. Well, you guys have heard what we think. Now I want to hear from you. If you're watching this video, comment one thing you like or hate about GMAX Toxtricity and let me know why as well. If you want to learn more about other GMAX Pokemon, feel free to check out the videos in this series. The playlist is in the description. If this is the first time you've seen one of my videos, consider subscribing as well. You've already made it this far, so you probably enjoyed the video. And of course, don't forget to like the video as well. Next week, my guest and I will be covering GMAX Colossal, so get excited for that. And if you'd like to vote on episode 13, your options are Sandaconda, Orbeetle, or Butterfree. Thanks for joining me today, Goldoa. Was there anything you wanted to plug? The floor is yours.
Well, you said it at the beginning. I am hosting a league that is about to enter playoffs at this point, so definitely come check that out. We live stream every single battle. I believe the Twitch link is going to be in the description of this video, so feel free to check that out. The Discord as well can be there. And then I also am currently running a server called Poke Equality. It's a safe space server for anybody who feels marginalized for anything at any point in their lives, or an ally of anybody who wants to come and hang out. It's a space that you can come, just relax. We talk about Pokemon. We have events throughout the year. Our next big charity event will be coming up in late August, so there's plenty of time before that for you guys to join and hang out and get to know the community. So feel free to join, hang out. That's really all I gotta say about that.
Honestly, the Poke Equality server, I would highly recommend joining that. Everyone could use a little bit more positivity in their life, and this server definitely provides it. So make sure to check out all the links. They will all be in the description. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one.